Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my recap and discussion for Outlander Season 6, Episode 5, Give Me Liberty. So, man, I am a little bit... Whoa, I have so many feelings. This is another great episode. This is going to be one that, being completely honest, for certain parts of it, I don't have perfect recollection for how well it directly follows parts of the books. And by that, I mean the stuff that's happening in Wilmington. So I may rely a little bit on my friends who maybe know this part of the book better than me. But there are a lot of things that I do have an opinion on and things I want to break down. So we're going to dive right into our episode recap and just get going through this because this episode started out, we'll get to that, but the last 10 minutes of this episode had so many heavy-hitting, plot drops for things that I'd either been wondering if we were going to get to, or things that I was like, oh, maybe they've just pushed that plot line aside, whatever. And then the preview for next week, the thing that's mostly stressing me now the most, because everything I've watched, again, I'm loving this season. I'm having the time of my life watching these episodes. The thing I'm most nervous about is that impending end of this season. We only have 3 episodes left. And the amount of plot lines that I'm seeing, which I'm excited about, I'm literally excited about all of them. I'm getting nervous if they're going to try to conclude them at the end of this season, or if some of them will maybe be like cliffhangers into season 7, since we have 16 episodes to look forward to in season 7. So I'm really hoping that they won't try to wrap up every single one of these plots that's being laid out. I want them to maybe drag into the next season. And especially because they know they're getting that season and that it's going to have 16 episodes. There are certain plot lines that I know will be the conclusion of this season. I think that's pretty clear in how it's being laid out. But some of the other ones, I'm hoping they're laying the seeds for a long-term situation, because otherwise I'm terrified how they will wrap this all up at the end of the season. But okay, we don't have to get into that quite yet. We'll talk more about that at the end. We're going to dive in. So the pre-credit scene brought back our favorite delusioned, weak, whiny, hopeful monarch of the... of the uprising, Bonnie Prince Charlie. And isn't it a joy to see that actor? Doesn't he bring us endless amounts of joy, even though it's a cringe and it is annoying? And he still finds a way to add in one of our favorite catchphrases, "Mark me." He still managed to squeeze it in. But we see the Bonnie Prince being smuggled out of Scotland, dressed as a woman, by Flora MacDonald, who has a pretty significant part to play in this episode. And he's pretending to be a woman, he's wearing a fluffy bonnet, and Flora, they're getting him past the guard and they're taking their boat off. So it was just a quick scene, but we do know, the Bonnie Prince is alive, living in, I think they said in Italy or France or somewhere, not having too many consequences for the trouble that he caused with the rebellion, right? And then we had a new intro. I didn't know if they were going to do this, and I don't know if it'll just be for this episode, since it very much went with the waves. And I did have someone comment in my Discord group, which I don't do a ton of chatting in my Discord, but I do have a personal Discord for my channel, and one of the tabs is about Outlander. Most of the conversation that my channel has, it lives in the comment section of these videos, but I was like, oh, there's a new intro, and someone who really likes, I think McGregor is how you say his name, or Gregor, who is the male voice, it's a full version of him singing in Gaelic the whole way through, and it was a very haunting, it was a very quiet intro, and I didn't even know it was the intro when the name started, except on Amazon, the little, like, if you'd like to skip the intro tab came up, and I was like, no, we're watching this. It was so beautiful. Like, it was haunting, and it was just this, it was cool because it was like him on this boat, and then it led to the boat where it's like opening in America. It was very quiet and just really beautiful. Like, it was just beautiful, and it's definitely giving you that, like, quiet before the storm vibe. That is definitely what I was feeling with that. So that was fantastic. Okay, so then we start up and we have a letter being read that is by Jamie, and we have Lord John Grey, and I'm not sure who the man is that he's talking with, so someone can put that down below, because I didn't have the subtitles on this time, which I wish that I had, but I didn't see who that was he was talking to. But Lord John Grey is being informed that Jamie has quit his role as the native representation to the crown. What's it called? The agent, the native agent. And Lord John Grey is being told that his name is on a list of seditionists and possible traitors to the crown. And Lord John Grey is looking a little like, oh my, James, my dear friend, what trouble are you getting us into now? So we get to see that. Then we learn that Jamie and Claire are in Wilmington, and they are there for a special event that Flora McDonald is going to be speaking at. And we're getting a little bit of exposition here, talking about that. Actually, Jamie knew Flora when they were teens, and he had a bit of a crush on her, maybe, which he's playing off. But Claire is like, did you have an entrante for her? And he's like, oh, no, I didn't. But that's okay. She's a very beautiful woman, so it's okay if as children he had a little bit of a flirty flirt with her. It's adorable. And they are sharing that Fergus is going to be living in New Bern. We don't get the full scope of that immediately, but we are finding out that, like, we do find out pretty quickly that it is because Aunt Jo Costa bought it for him. And it's going to afford him work that he can do where he can feel useful. And we'll talk more about that later. But that, of course, is going to mean that Marcelly and the children are going to be leaving the Ridge, which is a very important part of the books, but it still makes me sad because I have loved getting to see Marcelly and Fergus this season, even though a lot of it has been very painful stuff. I've loved getting to see their characters more, so I do hope that we find good reasons to see them that work for the story, but that we actually get to spend some time with them, which would be great. So yes, so we have Jamie and Claire discussing that it will be, they're discussing like why Flora McDonald is speaking on behalf of the crown and why there may be so many Scots who are on the side of the crown. And Jamie kind of explains from his perspective that, if he didn't have Claire to tell him that this revolution was going to win, he probably would lay low and maybe even be on the side of the crown too, because he's just tired of war and he's tired of losing people and always having to do that dance. And he's like, there's a lot of people who they have so much to lose because a lot of them are already people who have been, kicked here to America. They were deported to here or put into indentured servitude, and they don't want to enter into anything again. They want to stay out of it. So these people have so much to lose, and from their perspective, little to gain, because, they don't know that this time around the revolution is going to win, So we have Jamie sussing out some of the peeps. He goes to this tavern where, people are saying, yay for the king. And he's like, yeah, you guys don't really seem like you're on the side of the king here. You seem very enthused. And pause. Did anybody else watch Turn, Washington Spies, when it was on AMC back in the day? Because that room, and I would love to hear like more details about it, because I'm sure this set maybe is based on like an actual historical place, which is why the set from Turn resembles this set. But I swear that there was a tea room in Washington Spies that like matched this place we were at as a meeting place for the Sons of Liberty. I believe. Tell me if I'm wrong, but if you're also someone who watched that show, I was immediately like deja vu for a second. I was like, where have I seen this? And I was like, oh my God, Spies. And that was a place where, you know, I believe the guy who ran the place was a spy in turn. And, you know, he would collect information to assist the Sons of Liberty. So we're meeting the Sons of Liberty. And Jamie is being invited to a meeting. And then he also sees on the mantle Stephen Bonnet's bollocks. So that was an interesting little insert. Did anyone see that? There was a close-up to this jar and it said Stephen Bonnet's like bollocks. And they were like, you know, preserved in something. So that was interesting. So then we go back to the Ridge, and man, do I love the story arc we are going to get into, even though it was awkward in some places. This was very true to the book, and I love it. So we have Roger is working on the McCallum house. You know, he's working on getting their chimney done. He's been helping with repairs, like he promised that he would. And, you know, things are friendly with Amy, and it's, I'm sure, very nice for her to not be panicked that her and her son are going to starve or they're going to be cold. But then we switch over to Bree and some of the ladies, and I believe it's Bree, Marcelly, Malva, and Lizzie, and they are going through the woods, and Bree is trying to find a good option for getting a cistern for like water. I believe she's trying to work on irrigation. I think that's what the project was. Either way, love seeing her suss out, you know, more invention type things. We also will, in a future scene, get a look at her kiln. I just love it so much. I love it so much getting to see these little details and getting to see her do these things. But the women come across this, what looks like a little like sacrifice or something, you know, very specifically laid out on the ground. And, you know, Marcelly, being the smart chick that she is, recognizes this as a little bit of magic voodoo situation. Not voodoo as in the actual practice of voodoo, but, you know, witchy things. Or not even witchy, you know what I mean. It was very specifically placed there as some sort of charm or thing. And there were human finger bones. And Marcelly says that people will often take those from graves to do these spells. And she lists off the ingredients and is like, this looks like it was a love charm. And Malva immediately pointing out that this is something the fisher folk might do. And maybe Amy McCallum might be trying to lure herself a man, and she does sure spend a lot of time with Roger. So Malva is just shit stirring over here very blatantly. We'll get back to that crazy bitch. We'll get back to it. Also, Lizzie has a spell of malaria, and so we see her kind of fainting. And I'm glad this was brought back up because it is something very prominent through all the books. At different times, Lizzie will have flare-ups of this because malaria, once it is, you know, ingrained in you, it's not something you can make just go away. And it's something that we haven't touched on much with her. So I'm glad that that popped up. Then we switch back to Wilmington again, and we have LJG and Claire and Jamie meeting at this party, at this gathering. We also see Ancho Costa. But how great is it to have Lord John Grey talking with Jamie and Claire? It makes my heart just like smile so much. I love them together so much. And this may be one of the only episodes this season that we see him there. Just based on where the rest of the season's going, I don't know. Well, that might not be true, because I do know that whoever William is he's cast. So I have a gut feeling that a very important scene that we get between Brianna and William will probably be in this season, because I know that guy's been cast, that they've cast someone as him. I'm very bad at knowing the names of that, but I know that he exists. So we may see Lord John again in this season. If we're going to see William, I feel like we might. So we'll see. So anyway, we have Jocasta and her husband, Duncan, and they are sitting down to eat with them all, and we find out that Jocasta is the one who bought Fergus the print shop, and Jamie is like, well, oh, we're going to talk about more of that later. Sorry, I get confused. Even when I have the notes in front of me, it blurs together a little bit. This is why I take the notes. And so we find out she's the one who bought it, but we don't talk too much more about that. Jamie just seems a bit disgruntled that his son is going to be going, and she's like, but it'll be good for him to have something that he can do, with his own two hands. And also she comments on the fact that Jamie and Claire haven't come to visit at River Run much at all. And Jamie's just like, yeah, because, I've been a bit busy. I'm a bit busy. And there is a mention of that Mr. Bug does a lot of the deliveries of things back and forth. So we know that Mr. Bug, which we're going to comment on him a bit more going forward, Mr. Bug has not been forgotten, which was something that I was thinking maybe they were just kind of not doing a lot with that, but I think that they are. Then we see Major McD, and he's sad that Jamie, he's such a great character. Like, he really is like the best of the Redcoats. He's just so amiable. And I like that. I like that. I like it a lot. I like that Lord John Grey isn't the only good, like, redcoat that we know, Well, he's not even a redcoat anymore, but you know what I mean. And Jamie's like, well, wasn't the king happy with the deal, with the oath that I made for you? And he's like, yeah, but we still wish that you were doing it. And he's like, I know, but these reasons. Then we get to meet Flora and her husband. We have some nice interaction with her. And Jamie and her, chat about the old times for a second. Claire, of course, is not jealous. She thinks the woman is beautiful and very kind. They talk a little bit about their past together. And then she mentions that the reason they were late is that a gem from one of her necklaces was taken. A thief had broken in and stolen one of her gemstones. And that's just kind of laid there. And I barely caught it, but I was like, this woman who's connected with the Jacobite Rising has had a gemstone stolen. So maybe something to track. I don't know. Seems like it might be important to remember. Popping that out there. Then we switch back to Bree and Roger is getting back from helping Amy, and she is working on her kiln, and they have a discussion. And now Bree comes off a little bit like jealous in this, maybe, but we'll get to it, because I think it's totally fair for her to say, she's like, people are noticing that you spend more time with her than you spend with me. And Roger makes a point that she needs me. I feel needed by what she needs, and Bree makes a point, but she's never going to find a husband if you're acting as the man of the house and you're also making people comment. And he's like, she sees me as a minister. And Bree's like, but you're not a minister. You're just seen as a man who has a family at home, and you're spending more time at this woman's house who is kind to you, but you're staying there to have dinners, and then you're coming home to me, and it's a thing. And so Roger kind of brushes it off, but Bree is like, I'm just making a point. And we'll get back to it. And I think it's completely fair for her to say that, because while I've shared that I do love the relationship between, I do like the relationship between Roger and Amy and Aiden. I think it's important. I agree that they're not setting super clear boundaries for it. And Amy may be being very kind, and I don't see her as trying to poach him. I do see her as trying to do, trying to be kind to him for what he's done to her. She's feeding him. They're friendly. I can also get why anyone would be thinking other things, because, if Roger was my husband, I probably wouldn't love that he was doing that all the time either, right? It's a thing. Especially alone. It's not him and other men. It's him alone. Okay, so then we're back in Wilmington, and we have this little ladies drinking and smoking moment where Claire, Flora, and Jocasta are sitting out in this gazebo and they're reminiscing a little bit. Claire talks about how she knew Bonnie Charlie. She has a flashback to France. She has a flashback of King Louis raping her, / it was a deal that they made, their interaction. And then they're talking about how, like, Charlie, she just saw him as kind of a weak, scared man, and that he represented an idea, but he was not meant to be a leader of men, which I think is a great and very charitable way to talk about him, you know, of being like, he was in over his head, you know, he was told that he's the rightful king, but wasn't actually prepared to do that or to be a leader. And there was a high cost for that, you know, and Flora kind of explains why she wants there to be peace and to not stir up trouble with England because they've been through enough, you know, and that's a valid reasoning on her point, you know, and I understand why the Scots would feel that way. So then, though, we have Claire sending Jocasta and Flora off, and she pulls out the ether. And then we have Flora's speech actually happening and Claire coming back and Jamie saying, why were you gone? Where were you? And she's like, I needed a rest. So we do know that the ether is still coming up. And it seems to be for almost like lesser and lesser things now. And not that Paris wasn't traumatic, because it definitely was. I just wouldn't have seen King Louis as the most traumatic thing that happened to her. But that could just be a flash to reminding her of all of it. Like, we don't know. We see a flash, but there could be much more rabbit trails that her brain is going down, right? So Flora gives her speech and, you know, she says that, like, peace is at stake. There it is. Then we have Lord John Grey and Jamie talking, and you know, Lord John Grey is sharing the information he had that Jamie's name was on this list, and Jamie's like, people always want my name associated with them. You know, not to brag, but I am the king of men. People want to put my name with theirs. And John is like, well, that's really dangerous. And then we have Jocasta's servant Mary coming and saying, Lord John, there's something bad happening. And Jamie and John rush into town, and there's this man's print shop who he had printed the pamphlets announcing Flora's speech, and the people of the town are attacking the man for having printed these pamphlets. And Jamie is trying to reason with this mob who want to tar and feather this man and are saying, like, he's doing his job. Was paid to print these. And the printer is pointing the finger at Mary and saying, like, Mary's the one who bought these. And Mary's like, it's for a good cause. Like, they're going back and forth. And the guys have the tar and they're going to throw it. And Jamie gets hit with some of it. They only had it be a little spot. I'm pretty sure in the book he, like, gets hit across the chest with this tar, you know, trying to protect this guy. So John and Jamie are like, John's like wielding a broom against everyone, and the printer actually gets shot, but they're able to calm the people down when the redcoats come and disperse it. So then we have Jamie and Claire speaking together, and she's, you know, working on it, and Claire's saying, like, how are the people on the ridge going to feel when we declare ourselves? And he's like, well, I'm hoping we'll be able to keep them out of it. All signs point to highly unlikely you'll be able to do that, but there we go. Then we switch back to the ridge, and we have things escalating with Malva. Here we go. So Roger is helping Tom and the son, Alan, put up the bell at the church. There's a little bit of discourse about, like, we'll be able to have a bell, and that's fine. Well, Roger goes inside, and there's Malva laying on the ground with this man who I can't remember what his name was, but he's like over her, and we don't know if anything had fully happened or not yet, but he's like, nothing's happening. And Roger's like, Malva, your father is literally outside right now. What are you doing? And Malva immediately jumps to, you're not going to tell my father. And Roger's just kind of like, well, number one, he never said he was going to tell her father, but, you know, and she's like, if you say anything, I am going to tell everyone that I saw you kissing Amy McCallum, and they'll all believe me because you've been spending a lot of time with her. And Roger's just like, what? And she's like, You're not going to say anything. And Roger is stunned. Also maybe having a bit of a come to Jesus moment, because even though he knows he's never done anything inappropriate, he also knows that she's right. And people would believe her because he's put himself in a place where gossip can happen, even if nothing bad is happening. And that comes to full force for him at a moment where he can't say anything back to this girl who is a little wicked bitch. But there we go. Okay, there we go. Y'all know who are long-term viewers. I do have extended sympathy for Malva in things. The show is not letting us see what those sympathies would be. I do have sympathy for her. But in this episode that stands on its own, I think she is a freaking bitch, and I'm terrified of her. We'll see. So then we have the discussion with Jocasta and Jamie, and they're at the breakfast table the next day. And he's confronting Jocasta with the fact that she paid for those pamphlets for the gathering. And he's saying, you also paid for Fergus's print shop because you're hoping that you'll be able to influence what he prints. And Jamie makes it very clear that if what you do causes my son to be hurt, we will be in a lot of trouble. Like, we will be in a lot of trouble about this. And he's like, I know that you're grieving and that you want to protect people from being involved in a rebellion again. But like, if this affects my son because he gets tarred and feathered for printing seditious, or he gets arrested for printing seditious materials, or he gets tarred and feathered for printing loyalist stuff, like, if this affects my family, we're going to have problems. And Jocasta is just like, I don't want there to be war anymore, you know? So then we have Jocasta leave the table, and Mary comes over and says that she has heard Jocasta mumbling in her sleep about Murtaugh and about money stained with blood and French gold. And I put in my notes the French gold. There are all the little secrets are popping up again about the Frenchman's gold that caused us so much trouble back in season 3 and in, at different times, this season 3 and 4, I think. 3 and 4, this Frenchman's gold causing us so much problems. So I'm getting hyped because it's coming back. Okay, then we go back to Bree and Roger again, and this was a wonderful way to kind of like round off this little bit of tiff that was happening. And Roger, he says that he's found someone else who is single who can pick up taking care of Amy and Aiden, and Bree just calls it out. She's like, you have a soft spot for young mothers, for single mothers. And he's like, I really do. And he's like, I see them and I want to help them. And she's like, I just want to be clear. Like, I wasn't worried about you. I just was worried about, your reputation and what people say. And Roger says, he's like, I want to spend time, just the three of us. I want to make time for that. And Bree says, the four of us. I'm so happy. So Bree is pregnant. And this is one of the other plot lines for book 6. And I'm terrified, y'all. I'm terrified about what this means. But of course, I'm very excited. There is a sweet little new character coming who brings a lot of joy to the series. But this pregnancy signifies something coming that is going to be very interesting to see how it happens in the show. Like, this is my eyes. And if you're book readers, you know what I'm talking about. So this is the thing that I've been excited for and dreading and didn't know if it was going to happen in this season. So there's that. Then we show Malva going up to this tent/hut in the woods. And when she enters it, there is a dead man there with flies buzzing around. I have no idea who that man is. And she uncovers his hand, and there is a finger missing. What was in the love spell in the woods? Human finger bones. And we watch her cut off one of this dead man's fingers. And it is disturbing. So we know that Malva is working on a love spell. Malva has been caught in the church with her dress flipped up with someone. We've seen her flirting with Ian before. What is going on with this woman? I would love to know. I would love to know, as I always do. If you watch my videos and you are only a show watcher, I would really love you to tell me what you think is going on with this girl. Because here's the thing too. There are bits and pieces of these clues that we see in the books, like the one from Roger's point of view, and we see Claire notice her flirting and kissing some different people, but we don't get to see the finger situation. I believe that is true to book because we do come across the spell and we know that Malva did it in the book, but I just want to know what you think, seeing this, what you think of her. Curious minds want to know. So then we have Jamie is letting Lord John Grey know, because Lord John Grey tells him that there's this meeting going to be happening, and Jamie tells him, I know, I was invited and I'm planning to go. And Lord John Grey does not like this news. He says, what are you doing? This is a horrible idea. Any rebellion that would pop up, the crown is going to crush it. And Jamie, he can't say why he knows this. He can't say why he knows this. And he's like, this is just the stance that I'm going to take, and this is Jamie's mind made up. And John is just telling him to be careful, and this is really one of the first big rifts that begins with Lord John and Jamie. A rift we will see healed and torn apart at many different times over the coming years, but this is the first big where Jamie really admits it. And one of the things I do miss, so I love that we got to see Lord John in person, 1000%. I am not complaining. A big difference about this from the books. So, in the show where it's mentioned a few times that Lord John has sent Bree some different items for experiments. One of the big things in the books is we get these wonderful letters between Bree and John and Jamie and John. And there are these letters that go back and forth over the years because that's how they're able to be in contact. And so we get these little, Bree will ask John to send some of these ridiculous items, and he's like, okay, I have no idea what this is for, but I trust that, Bree, that you're doing something good with it, and he will send, something crazy to her, which I just love. He really is such a good friend to her over the years. I kind of wish there had been a discussion about they had mentioned her or something so that we could show that, but what was she doing with this or whatever, that could have been cool. I understand why not, but I would like the reminder that John loves this whole family, and so a lot of his rebuke of Jamie, even if he understands that need for them to be free, he's more just worried about them. He loves them all. He loves them. He particularly loves Jamie, but he loves this whole family, and it is, it's his son's family, and it's nerve-wracking for him, So then we have Jamie going to the Sons of Liberty meeting, and this scene, you guys, I posted about this on my Instagram and on my Facebook, because there were lines in this interaction that literally my spine was tingling up and down, because some of the words in this directly apply to things that are happening in our world. And just being real, I'm not they just will always apply. You know what I'm saying? I'm not just saying to be our government, the way this is happening right now is exactly in, no, things come and go, things go in cycles, and all over the world. This is not just specific to us, but some of the words being said were just shocking. So he shows up at the meeting, and the men tell him he's not welcome, and he's like, well, why? And he's like, you were, I can't remember, he's talking about the fact that you were seen defending this printer for printing things in support of the crown, and that is directly against our aims. And Jamie says this beautiful speech, which some of it I have word for word, but first I'll kind of sum up some parts of it, because I can never sound as cool as Jamie does anyway. But he shares that, I thought that we were going to be fighting for freedom, and that means that a man at work can take the jobs that he wants to. You know, having absolute freedom means whatever opinion you have, it's allowed. And if someone's against you, you're not trying to destroy them. Like, they're allowed to say something that is counter to what you agree with. And Jamie's like, I thought that we were the sons of liberty, you know, not the sons of oppression, of oppressing the views you don't agree with. And that kind of quiets them all. And then he says this, which I have word for word. He says, is it liberty when a man is cowed into silence or threatened into submission? Is it liberty if his property is taken from him? You know, and Jamie is sharing that, like, if we're for liberty, if we're for freedom, we have to be for everyone's freedom, not just the people who agree with us. And again, that gives me chills. There were things in this speech that directly point to cancel culture, which, again, if you only watch my videos because I am doing Outlander content, in a lot of my book reviews and other content, I talk about that. I despise cancel culture. I believe in protecting everyone's speech, even speech we don't like, because the speech that people say that we don't like, it lets us know what this person's motives are and why we shouldn't like them. And if we silence people, if we say they're not allowed to say those things, how can you ever know what their true motives are if you want to shut them down and shame them off of a platform because they're not saying what you want? I fully believe I believe it's even a proverb. I'm pretty sure it's in the Bible. Better an open blasphemer than someone who hides their secrets in their heart. I probably just bastardized that verse, but I know it's like better an open disagreement than a hidden liar, you know? Anyway, I'm not here to be on my high horse. I don't have a high horse anywhere around. But the point being, this speech just gave me chills because it is something that is true in all times. It isn't just true during the revolution, and it isn't just true now because I think things are coming back around. We see it all through time. And I just love James Fraser being that king of men. And so he's warning them. He said, there are soldiers coming right now. And he's like, how do you know this? And then the men are there. And so they get everyone to leave and they pretend to be playing pool and they're able to get away with it. So then we have the next morning and we have Claire and Jamie are going to be I think they're heading back to the Ridge. I think that's where they're going. You know, after the experience, and Claire hears a whistling. She hears a whistling sound, and it's for a song from the future. And it's funny because some people in comments thought it was Stephen Bonnet, which I was like, y'all, he definitely got shot in the head. He's definitely dead. His bollocks is definitely on that wall. But as Claire and Jamie are leaving, we get the shot of the jail cell, and we see this man in a coat with this long black hair, and he's whistling a song. And it's very distinct hair because we don't see this man's face. But if you remember the last time we saw him, which was season 5, episode 12, it's Donner. The person who, while Claire was captured, he is a native man who is from the future. And we don't know his whole backstory yet. We know a little bit about the group of people because when back in season 4, when Claire and Jamie were trying to rescue Roger, there was a discussion about the man who had, you know, the gemstone and was trying to convince the natives to, you know, fight back, to do certain things. But we don't, I believe in the show, fully know how that all connects yet. But Donner is still alive. He wasn't killed when Jamie and Ian and everyone came and slaughtered everyone who had raped Claire. He escaped. So we're going to find out what that means. So this episode was so much, and we have so many storylines that are leading into the end, okay? The French gold pops back up. We have whatever freaky Malva is doing. We have Bree is pregnant. We have Fergus and Marcelly who are moving. And then in the preview for next week, we see a couple of things. We see a certain illness is coming to the Ridge, and we see Malva touching Jamie. Claire sees Malva touching Jamie while she is Stark with fever. I am extremely excited to see how these next 3 episodes are going. I am on the edge of my seat because, as I said at the beginning, I don't know which plots we're going to try to bring to fruition by the end of this season and which ones we will play out continuing. I really hope there is some seeded further. But I'm terrified. I'm definitely terrified. Holy shit. I really love actually the sickness storyline, even though it's very intense. I really love the dynamic. I mean, I don't obviously love it, but I love the dynamic of Claire the healer like being sick, because so often she has to play vigil for Jamie. He's hasn't really had to like live through that yet, and I think it brings out some amazing things in them, and it really puts him on the other side of what it's like trying to get your loved one to live for you, to stay with you. And it's going to be very interesting. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for showing up for another recap of this. Please make sure you like this video and leave a comment. I want these videos to continue to be successful so that it's encouraging for me to keep making them. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, get notified when I upload. Maybe you want to check out some of my other videos. I recommend books all week long. That's what I do. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.